Who would rather just keep hearing the choir sing? My wife leaned over to me a little bit ago and said, I think the candles might be melting on the organ, so I assume somebody will watch that. Or maybe we'll all watch that. Okay. Sometimes things just sort of flow through you or past you. We were driving up this morning, and of course I'm still thinking about encouraging one another and encouraging you and you encouraging me. And there's this huge billboard. Some of you may have seen it driving up from Independence, just past Liberty, I think. It says, "Drive Encouraged, 97.3 FM." So, hey, there might be a sermon on 97.3 FM. Drive Encouraged. I kind of like that. Yesterday I was in Tulsa at a wedding, which was a wonderful, encouraging event. And I just want to tell you a little bit about, I'm going to go ahead and use his name, Russ, who was a person who in the world might be defined as a person with some limitations mentally. But I just thought, what a gift. I've not felt so encouraged in a long while, because when Russ meets you, it's like there is no more important person in his life than you. And he tells you he loves you, he hugs you. And he was the usher at this wedding, one of the two ushers. And he would just say, now my job is to keep people safe and secure. I'm good at keeping people safe and secure. And he brightened everyone at the wedding. It was great. I've never seen a person more enthusiastic about a job in all of my life. But they say he's a sacker. Is that what you call it? A sacker at the grocery store? And people will stand in a long line just to go through his line so they can be greeted and told they're loved and given a hug by Russ. So I'd kind of like to be like that. I hope you're that kind of encourager. Well, I've been thinking about people that have encouraged me and encourage mission, encourage the building of the reign of God in our midst in recent days. And I have some heroes in the faith. And this morning, for those of you who came back, good heavens, I told you of one person. I'm going to tell you another person. And I think every faith community needs to have its saints. And if we had a sainthood or saintdom in the community of Christ, which is the community to which I belong, and many of you here, I'm certainly not all of you, welcome everyone, we would have Saint Edward Guy. And I had the privilege of working with Ed for a number of years in Latin America, and I could tell you lots of stories. But I think if you met a saint, you'd realize that they're very human, that they have idiosyncrasies. In fact, most of them are eccentric. But Ed was a saint among saints. And he was the kind of person who, the first time I went to El Salvador and talked to our members there it was just after the Civil War, I was taken to visit people in communities on the outside of San Salvador, and people would want to tell me these stories about Ed. And they would say, during the war, there was a time when there was a rebel trying to cross the street alone. No one was around, and suddenly a soldier from the army came out, and the soldier was going to kill the rebel. And Ed Guy saw that. He had a white flag. He waved the white flag. He ran out and said, "In the name of the Lord, do not kill that man." And the soldier just turned and left. And they would talk about how during the time of, there's always fighting in the city, and they lived out near the prisons, and there was lots of fighting in the prison because the rebels would come to try to break other rebels out of the prison. And when the fighting would happen, and Ed was with folk, he'd just get them all lying down on the floor, and they'd recite the 91st Psalm together. And Ed would pray for them. And everywhere you went, you would just hear these stories about Ed. So that's the kind of person he was. But what an encourager. The issue was that if you had a plan for, the important ministry you were going to do that day, a meeting at this place at this time with these pastors, and a meeting over here with some young adults, and a meeting over here on a social project. We had some development projects there, particularly after the war. If you were with Ed, forget it. Because the minute he stepped out the door, if there was a person in need, that was the agenda. And so you would say, Ed, we have important things to do here. We have meetings. And then we'd say, Ed, we have this taxi. 5 people will fit in this taxi. And Ed said, but I have my 2 friends with me. So we'd get 7 people in a taxi, or we'd get 2 taxis. Or we'd all ride the bus. Ed died in Guatemala City because he had congestive heart failure, and he never took his medicine, and he ate lots of salt. When he died on the street, he was walking to an office of a justice group that was working to identify the disappeared in the war in Guatemala, another civil war, and to try to bring to justice those who had murdered all of these citizens and thrown them down a well. He was on his way up the street to meet with some of those folk, died of a heart attack. And at that point, Ed never had money because he always gave it away. At that point, there was no one there, and they couldn't get a hold of us to provide some of the support that later we were able to supply. So I'm not making this up. They rented a casket for just a short time. I'm sure the buyers of the casket the next time did not know about this, but they rented the casket to have the funeral before they cremated the body. So Ed was buried, in a sense, in a borrowed grave. That's St. Edward. And if you go to El Salvador or Honduras or Guatemala today, and even on the border of Mexico, if some people remember him, they will talk about this man who changed their life, who encouraged them. I'm going to shift a little bit. This will date me, but I'm getting up there. So I was at Graceland a few years ago, and when I was here, like possibly some of you, I learned rather quickly that my high school and particularly grade school images of American history and world history didn't quite hold up. And I also learned that my church history didn't quite hold up to my Sunday school lessons. I learned that there were some shadow sides to my own nation's history, to my own church's history, that there was darkness along with the light. Those were the years of the Vietnam War. Those were the years of the Civil Rights Movement. Those were the years when I read a book called The Other America by Michael Harrington, which showed me an America that I really had no idea existed. I was from probably a lower middle class farm and ranch background. We always had what we needed. We never had a lot of excess, but we were well cared for. And suddenly I discovered in my nation races of people and people of out of the way places, rural pockets or urban centers that lived life so much differently than I did. And this American dream that I had grown up on and I believed in, and in some ways I still believe in, was not happening in reality. So I suppose that my university years, particularly those first couple of years, were filled with some real shock about certain realities. The world was a lot more dangerous place. It was a lot riskier place. It was a lot less black and white than I had thought. And, all my images of life as Disneyland, if I had some of that, were gone. There was a song very popular in those days